Hear now the word of the Lord as he speaks through the Apostle Matthew. Now, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, in the days of Herod the king, behold, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem, saying, "Where is he who has been born King of the Jews? For we saw his star when it rose, and have come to worship him." When Herod the king heard this, he was troubled, and all Jerusalem with him. And assembling all the chief priests and scribes of the people, he inquired of them where the Christ was to be born. They told him, "In Bethlehem of Judea, for so it is written by the prophet. And you, O Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah. For from you shall come a ruler who will shepherd my people Israel." Then Herod summoned the wise men secretly and ascertained from them what time the star had appeared. And he sent them to Bethlehem, saying, "Go and search diligently for the child, and when you have found him, bring me word that I too may come and worship him." After listening to the king, they went on their way. And behold, the star that they had seen when it rose went before them until it came to rest over the place where the child was. When they saw the star, they rejoiced exceedingly with great joy. And going into the house, they saw the child with Mary his mother, and they fell down and worshipped him. Then, opening their treasures, they offered him gifts, gold and frankincense and myrrh. And being warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they departed to their own country by another way. This is God's holy and inspired word. Thanks be to him. Well, this is a story. That's what it is. Matthew is telling a story. The whole entire gospel of Matthew is a story, and this is a story within a story. So I ask you, what do all good stories have in common? Good characters. Whether the characters are evil or the characters are good, you need good, full-dimensional, real emotions and characters. If you don't have that, you don't have a good story. You can have the best plot ever, the best writing ever, but if you don't have good characters, it's not a very good story, is it? And so tonight, what we're going to do is look at the three main characters in this story in order to better understand the epiphany of our King. The epiphany of our King. What does epiphany mean? It's a Greek word and simply means manifestation or appearance. So what we're looking at here is the manifestation or appearance of the King, the Christ. But not just any appearance, as we'll soon see. So in this story, we're going to be looking at three characters. We're going to see how Matthew talks about them and what we ought to know about these characters in order that we can better understand the epiphany of the King. First, we're going to look at Herod. We're going to look at Herod, the evil character in this story, the king of Judea. Second, we'll consider the Christ, the real King of the Jews. This is the main character of this story. This is what all the stories in this story are about. Third, we'll take a look at the wise men from the east. Okay, so those are the three characters that we're going to be looking at. Herod, the Christ, and the wise men from the east. These are the three main characters, the main players in this narrative. Without these characters, there is no story. And they tell us everything we need to know about the epiphany of the King. So the first character is Herod. King Herod, king of Judea. Who was he? Well, technically, he was the king of the Jews during this time. But the Jews never accepted him as the king. He was placed there because of his father's relationship with Julius Caesar. Yes, that Julius Caesar. This is a real historical person. These aren't just fairy tales. This is real history. So because of his father's relationship with Julius Caesar, Mark Antony, yes, that Mark Antony, placed him over Judea. And he said, "You are going to be the king of this region." So in one sense, he was a puppet king of Rome over Judea, which is where the Jews lived. He was also the king over Samaria and Idumea. But the Jews never really accepted him as their king. They saw him as a puppet king of a foreign nation. And Jews did not like foreign nations, Gentiles, Gentile dogs. They were not happy about Rome being over them, and they were not happy with who Rome decided to put over them, King Herod. There's one reason why they did not accept him. Another reason was they were overtaxed by him. You know, he had to pay for those wonderful building projects, the grand architecture that he splurged on somehow, and he did it through taxation, and really overtaxation. So you've got this puppet king overtaxing the Jews. They really don't like that. In addition, he's not ethnically Jewish. He was on one side Idumean, which is the Edomites, and on the other side he was Arab, Nabatean. He was an Arab Edomite. You think the Jews wanted an Arab Edomite over them as their king? Absolutely not. So there's several reasons why they did not like him. Another reason, even though he did convert to Judaism, he was a convert, he wasn't a true Jew. Okay? He respected some of their practices, but he never really fully converted to Judaism. There's another reason why they didn't like him. Another reason why they didn't like him was because he was a brutal, vicious murderer. Yes, he murdered his wife. He murdered his children. Why did he murder his wife and his children? Because they were Hasmonean, which was another dynasty during the time, and that to me is just very strange. She was Hasmonean when he married her, and he married her anyways, and then he killed her for being Hasmonean, and the children that he had with her, he also killed. Jews didn't like this. He also killed many Jews. Have you ever heard of the massacre of the innocents? The massacre of the innocents? What was the massacre of the innocents? Well, shortly after this narrative, we have several other narratives, and one of them is Herod. The reason why he wanted to ascertain where and when this child was so that he could go find the child, who was king of the Jews, and kill him. As we'll see, he never found out exactly who and where the child was. So what did he do instead? Instead of killing the child, he killed all of the male. See, the baby doesn't like that. Eliza knows. She doesn't like Herod. That's just a taste of how much they did not like Herod. In all seriousness, this is very serious. He killed all the male children. All of them in that region. That's sad, isn't it? Killing children is very sad. So he's clearly the evil one, the evil character, because he killed his wife, he killed his own sons, and he killed all of the children in the massacre of the innocents. The massacre of the innocents. Kind of reminds me of the 42 million innocents who were killed in the year 2020. What innocents are those? Yeah, you know, the ones who were aborted by their mothers. It's very sad, isn't it? 42 million innocents were massacred in the year 2020, and we think nothing of it. How many died from COVID last year? 1.8 million with COVID. How many died with COVID last year? 1.8 million. How many died from abortion? How many babies were massacred? 42 million. Yes. Evil. Pure evil. Herod was pure evil. Although he was king of Judea, king over the Jews, by the power given to him by Rome, he ruled over Judea, but he was not respected and considered the king of the Jews by the Jews themselves, but merely a puppet of the Romans. So that's who Herod was. And what is the evil character here doing in this narrative? Well, he's made aware of the star, which according to the wise men from the east means the true king of the Jews has just been born. Verse 3. When Herod the king heard this, he was troubled, as he should be, and all Jerusalem with him. Likely that's a reference to the leaders of Jerusalem, the ones who are getting wealthy off the people, the current setup that they have. The scribes, the Pharisees, the chief priests, the Herodians, the Sadducees. He was troubled, and all Jerusalem with him, and assembling all the chief priests and scribes of the people, he inquired of them where the Christ was born. So he was a Jew in name only, and we can see that because he doesn't know the Scriptures. He doesn't know the Bible. He didn't know what the biblical text said, so he had to say, hey, can you guys tell me when the king is going to be born, where he's going to be born, all these details? And we get an example of what they told him here in verse 5. They said, in Bethlehem of Judea, for so it is written by the prophet, and you, O Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah, for from you shall come a ruler who will shepherd my people Israel. And Herod becomes frantic, troubled, terrified, because he senses a real threat. You see, people aren't fooled by phony leadership. People are not fooled by the leadership that Herod is providing. He's a phony king. Truth has a certain quality to it that fallacy does not, and they saw right through him. They knew who their rightful king was. God, Yahweh. That is who their true king was, and Herod knew it also. He knew that he was ruling on borrowed time. Thus, we read in verse 7, he summoned the wise men secretly and ascertained from them what time the star had appeared. And he sent them to Bethlehem, saying, go, search diligently for the child, and when you found him, bring me word that I may too worship him. Now, of course, we know that's not true. That was not his intent. That's a trick. That's his little clever way of saying, let me know where the child is so I can murder the innocent. He was already planning the massacre. He was already planning to massacre the one who is born king of the Jews. Herod, faced with the true kingship of Messiah, of the Christ, of the true King of Kings and Lord of Lords, what does he do? He responds in weakness. You see, those who are weak often overplay their hands, and that's exactly what Herod does here. Faced with the reality of the true king coming into the world, he felt threatened and he lashed out, as so many do when faced with the reality of Christ. In Hebrew, Mashiach, the Messiah. In Greek, Christos, the king, the anointed one. This is the true king, and when people face the reality of that, when phony kings and rulers face that, they're very scared. Think of Psalm 2. Why do the nations rage and the peoples plot in vain? The kings of the earth set themselves and the rulers take counsel together against Yahweh and against his Mashiach, that is his Christ, saying, let us burst their bonds apart and cast away their cords from us. That's exactly what Herod's doing here. He's trying to figure out, how can I kill this king? He's plotting against the Lord and against his anointed, against his Messiah, against the Christ. Let us burst their bonds apart. Let me find a way to destroy this king because my kingship is being threatened. How does the Lord respond? Psalm 2. He who sits, this is one of my favorite verses in all the scriptures. He who sits in the heavens laughs. The Lord holds them in derision. And he will speak to them in his wrath and terrify them in his fury, saying, as for me, I have set my king, my ruler, the true king, on Zion, my holy hill. While the kings of the earth, like Herod, plot against the King of Kings and Lord of Lords, the Lord sits in the heavens and laughs. You have nothing on the true king, Herod. The King of Kings, he warns the rulers of the earth, and he says, he's speaking to Herod, he's speaking to the scribes, the Pharisees, the Sadducees, the Herodians, anyone who seeks to do damage to this king and his kingship. He says, now therefore, O kings, be wise. Be warned, O rulers of the earth. Serve the Lord with fear. Rejoice with trembling. Kiss the Son, lest he be angry and you perish in the way, for his wrath is quickly kindled. Blessed are all who take refuge in him. The true king, the Son, the Christ. That brings us to our second character, doesn't it? We've seen the evil character, Herod, the king. But now we look to the true king of the Jews, Jesus. Now we only see him here as a newborn infant, and yet it's amazing how threatened this how threatened King Herod is with this newborn infant coming onto the scene. he is very scared of just a small little child. Even though Herod wasn't big on Scripture, even though he didn't know where to find prophecies about the true king, he knew that when God speaks, God's very serious about what he says. And so when prophets prophesy the words of the Lord concerning the Messiah, Herod is very careful and he pays attention. When Herod asks about the Christ, where he is to be born, the scribes respond with the word of God concerning Christ, saying this. He says, where's Christ going to be born? I really want to worship him. Verse 5, they told him, in Bethlehem of Judea, for so it is written by the prophet, and you, O Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah, for from you shall come a ruler who will shepherd my people. Now, that comes directly from the prophet Micah, chapter 5, verse 2. We went into great detail with it last week, along with many other shepherding and kingly prophecies. It's about the ruler, the true king, the anointed one, the Christ, the one who would be born in Bethlehem and rule over the people. It's one of the many prophecies concerning the Christ and his birth. Now, I'm not going to go over all of them, but I think it's important that we at least just look at a couple, because I'm almost certain that they didn't just quote that one verse and say that's all you need to know about this king, Herod. They most likely went into pretty great detail in order to give Herod the information that he needed to know concerning the Christ. Now, this one who is to be born in Bethlehem, according to Micah 5:2, the one who's to be born in Bethlehem is the same Christ who is going to be the skull crusher that we are hopefully now so familiar with from Genesis 3:15, the offspring of the woman who would come and crush the head of the serpent, that the serpent would strike his heel. Beloved, we see right now in this text, in this narrative, the serpent striking the heel. As he tries to find out where Jesus is, that is the serpent lashing out and striking the heel of the offspring. But the skull crusher will come, and he will crush the head of Herod, along with anyone else who comes against him. Paul tells us that this skull-crushing offspring is fulfilled in the birth of Jesus through Mary, 2 Timothy chapter 4. So this Christ is the one to be born of Mary, the woman of the offspring. He is the same offspring that we hear about in Genesis 49:8, in the last will and testament of Israel, Jacob. 49:8, he says this to Judah. He says, Judah, your brothers will praise you. Your hand will be on the neck of your enemies. Skull crusher, right? Your father's son shall bow down before you. All of Israel will worship this king. The scepter shall not depart from Judah. Who uses scepters? Kings, right? Christ's anointed one. Nor the ruler's staff from between his feet until tribute comes from him. Comes to him, rather. Who receives tribute? Kings. And to him shall be the obedience of all the peoples. Who receives obedience? Kings. So this is about the Messiah, the Christ, the King. He's going to come through Judah. And he is the main character of our narrative today. And in fact, he is the main character of the story of the Holy Scriptures. It's all about Jesus. Remember, O foolish ones and slow of heart to believe all that the prophets have spoken. And then Jesus, the incarnate, crucified, risen Christ, opens their hearts, opens their minds to the Scriptures as he shows them in all the Scriptures, from Moses to all the prophets, the things concerning himself. So he goes through all the prophets and he says, look, there's me. Look, there's me. And he gets to Isaiah chapter 7, verse 14. He says, look, there's me. The Lord himself will give you a sign. Behold, the virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and you shall call his name Emmanuel, God with us. And he continues, look, chapter 9, verse 6. For to us a child is born, a son is given, and the government shall be upon his shoulder. That is the government of the universe. This is a different type of government. Don't think worldly governments. Think the whole universe. And his name shall be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. And the increase of his government and of peace, there will be no end. It's not like any government that you can ever imagine. This one has no end to it. His dominion shall be an everlasting dominion. And on the throne of David and over his kingdom, he will establish it and uphold it with justice and righteousness from this time forth and forevermore. Speaking of David, It's the same offspring who we see here in Matthew chapter 2, this king, this Messiah. It's the same offspring through whom David was promised, I will raise up your offspring after you, and he will sit on the throne for a little while, for a decent amount of time. No, forever. He will sit on the throne forever. I will be to him a father, and he will be to me a son. All of the scriptures have been preparing them for this offspring, this Messiah, this Christ. And guess what? He's now here, Herod. Be afraid, O kings of the earth. Be warned, O rulers. He's here, Herod. He's in Bethlehem. You want proof? You've already got it. The wise men came from the east, and they're inquiring, where's the king? His star has led us here. And you know what? They were probably thinking, well, if Herod's the king, it's probably his son, right? That's the natural thing that they were thinking. And so they come to him, and Herod's scared. Herod's afraid. Because this is the true king, the King of kings and Lord of lords, the Christ, the Messiah. And so we've seen the second character in this wonderful story. First character is the evil character, Herod, the one who's plotting, the one who's seeking to kill the innocent. Now we have the main character of this story, and not just of this story, but of the whole story of the scriptures, Jesus Christ, the Messiah. That brings us to our final character. Who's the final character? Well, technically it's actually characters because it says wise men, right? Not wise man. So it's wise men from the east. In Greek, by the way, remember it's written in the New Testament's in Greek, it doesn't say wise men. It says magi. Magi. That's why most of us have heard about the magi, right? Growing up, we all know about the magi. What does this word mean? Where is it from? Who are these people? Well, believe it or not, it's actually where we get the word magician. Magi, magician. It's most likely either magicians or astrologers from Persia. So these are Persian astrologers or magicians. Isn't that interesting? Think about that. These are magicians or astrologers. I'm going to go with astrologers because what are they looking at? What's guiding them? What's leading them? A star. So they're looking into the sky because they're astrologers. Now think about this. Astrologers from Persia. Think about how powerful and awesome our God is. That he would speak to Gentiles, to Persians, to astrologers through a star. And say, the king is here. Think Psalm 19, right? Psalm 19. The heavens declare the glory of God, and the sky above proclaims his handiwork. Day to day pours out speech, and night to night reveals knowledge. God is speaking to the Magi through natural theology. He's speaking through nature. So interesting, I think. That's how powerful God is. He's telling non-Jews about the King of the Jews, and they know that they need to come and worship him. That's power. That's our God. He tells them, there is one who is worthy of worship, and he was just born. And you shall bring him gifts, and you shall offer him the worship that he is due. Incredible. Now again, they probably, when they get there, they're thinking, well, if Herod's the king, this is probably his son, so they're talking to the king, right? They try to find out where he is, and they say, it's because the star has led us there. These men definitely are not Jews. They come to worship the King of the Jews, who has been revealed to them by the star. I want you to listen to Numbers 24:17. A star will come forth from Jacob, that is Israel, and a scepter will arise from Israel, and he will crush the skulls of Moab and strike down the sons of Sheth. Who is this star? It's the same star that we see in Revelation 22:16. The star of Revelation 22:16. Guess who it is? Guess. Don't be scared. I, Jesus, have sent my angel to give you testimony to the churches. I am the root and the offspring of David, the bright morning star. And his star appears to these magi, these Persian magicians, astrologers, not Jews, to the magi, to the Gentiles. Now, we're familiar enough with the Old Testament, right, to know that the Jews are not big fans of the Gentiles. They considered the Gentiles to be dogs. They're not God's chosen people. They didn't like them. They wouldn't come near them. They wouldn't eat near them. They're Gentile dogs. The chosen ones are the sons of Israel. Gentile dogs do not receive the inheritance. They did not have the covenants of promise. That's not for them. That's for us, the Jews, right? Except one thing. This is the epiphany of the king, not to the Jews, to the Gentiles. In this narrative, Jesus, the Christ, is manifested. He appears to, not the Jews, but these men from the east, the Magi. And look at the response of the Magi. I love their response. What's their response? It's the proper response when you come into the presence of the Christ. They worship him. They bring him fancy, expensive gifts, very hard to find things. And then being warned in a dream, probably Gabriel. Remember Gabriel, he keeps appearing. Instead of giving Herod the information that he wanted in order to destroy the innocents, so that he could kill the Christ, they go a different route. And they don't tell Herod anything. So it appears that maybe our main character, the Christ, is not just the king of the Jews, but maybe he's actually the king of all people. What do you think about that? Think that maybe he's more than just the king of the Jews, that he's actually the king of the Gentiles, the nations. He's the king of the universe. Is that possible? Is that a possibility here? I thought the promise was for the Jews. What's going on? Well, consider our call to worship. Psalm 72. This was for the Jews. It was written to the Jews. What does it say? May he, that is the royal son, may he have dominion from sea to sea. It's not talking about the Sea of Galilee. It's talking about the Mediterranean. Well, what's on that side of the Mediterranean? Well, you've got Africa, you've got Italy, you've got Spain, you've got France, then you've got Greece, then you've got this little tiny area called Israel. May he have dominion from sea to sea, from the river, the great river, to the ends of the earth. That's pretty universal kingship, isn't it? He's basically saying, may he have kingship everywhere. May desert tribes bow down before him. Desert tribes. Not Jews, desert tribes like Arabs. May the Arabs bow down before him. May the kings of Tarshish, definitely not a Jew, kings of Tarshish are not Jews, and of the coastlands render him tribute. May the kings of Sheba and Seba bring him gifts. May all kings fall down before him and all nations serve him. What's this here in Psalm 72 that we're hearing? It is Gentile worship of the King of the Jews. Okay? This is the plan all along. For the Gentiles to worship the King of the Jews, because he's not just the King of the Jews. He's the King of the universe. What about Abraham? Abraham is proof of that. Abraham. He was Jewish, right? Abraham was a Jew? No. Abraham wasn't a Jew. Where is he from? He was taken out of Ur, the land of the Chaldeans. Babylonians. What? Baghdad. Abraham wasn't Jewish. Listen to this. Chapter 12 of Genesis. Now the Lord said to Abram, that was his name before God gave him the extra H and the extra A. The Lord said to Abram, go from your country, that's where the Chaldeans live, Babylon, and your kindred and your father's house to the land that I will show you, and I will make of you a great nation. And I will bless you and make your name great. Now a Jew hears that and says, yeah, that's us. Of course, talking about Israel. Of course, we're better than everybody. We're the ones who received this promise. God says, I will bless you and make your name great so that you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and him who dishonors you I will curse. And in you all the families of the earth will be blessed. What does that mean? It means the plan all along was not just for the Jews. The plan all along was for even Gentiles like us to be engrafted in. The promise is for those who believe, not for those who are circumcised, for those who believe. Now, what does the Hebrew of Hebrews, you may not believe me, but what does the Hebrew of Hebrews, the Apostle Paul, tell us concerning this little passage on Abraham? He says in Galatians 3:8, he says, know then that it is those of faith who are the true sons of Abraham. and the scripture, foreseeing that God would justify the Gentiles by faith, preached the gospel beforehand to Abraham, saying, in you all the nations will be blessed. All the Gentiles will receive the blessing of salvation in the Christ. So then, those who are of faith are blessed along with Abraham, the man of faith. So what we're witnessing here in this story from Matthew, and this is so important, with the Magi worshiping the King of the Jews, the Christ, what we're seeing has actually already been promised all throughout the Holy Scriptures. And it anticipates what we are doing right now. New covenant worship. Psalm 22:27. All the ends of the earth shall remember and turn to the Lord. That's Yahweh. It says all the nations will turn to Yahweh. Not just the Jews. All the families of the nations will worship before you, for kingship belongs to Yahweh, and he rules over the nations, that is, the Gentiles. The King of the Jews is also the King of the Magi, and guess what? He is your King too. This is our King, because now in Christ Jesus, those who are far off, that is us, Gentiles, have been brought near. Beloved, how have we been brought near? By the blood of Christ. We have been brought near by the blood of Christ. Remember, Isaiah said, I will give you as a covenant to the people. We've been brought in through the blood of Christ. For he himself is our peace, our shalom. That is, we're reconciled to God through him and through his blood. For he has made us both one, that is Jew and Gentile. He's made us both one. And has broken down in his flesh, that is on the cross, the dividing wall of hostility between Jews and Gentiles, by abolishing the old covenant, the Mosaic laws, so that he might create in himself one new man in place of the two. What is that one new man? It's called Christian, follower of Christ. Thus making peace, and might reconcile us both, Jew and Gentile, to God in one body, that is the church, through the cross, killing any hostility. And this Christ came and he preached peace to you who are far off, that's Gentiles, peace to those who are near, that's Jews, for through him we both have access in one Spirit to the Father. Thus, you are no longer strangers and aliens, Gentiles. How many here are actually Jews? How many of you are Jews? Ethnically. That's right, we're all Gentiles. Okay? You, Gentiles, are no longer strangers and aliens, but you are fellow citizens and members with the saints and members of the household of God. So through the cross, God is bringing Jews and Gentiles together for the purpose of worshiping the King of the Jews, and we see that here in our story. As the Magi bring him worship, they bring him obedience, they bring him gifts, because he's not the King of the Jews. He is, but he's much more than that. He's the King of the universe. Remember, we heard from Isaiah earlier, I will give you as a covenant for the people a light to the nations. What's the word in Hebrew? Goyim. What's Goyim? Gentiles, non-Jews. This is the whole point. It's to open the eyes that are blind, to bring out the prisoners from the dungeon, from the prison those who sit in darkness. He is the light that brings light into the darkness. For us, not just for the Magi, but for all of us, as John says. And this is so important. This is how we tie in the incarnation. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things were made through him, and without him was not anything made that was made. In him was life, and the life was the light of men. The light shines in the darkness. He's alluding to Isaiah 42. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. That light is the same light that the Magi saw here in our story. The true light, which gives light to everyone, has come into the world. The true light that gives light to just the Jews? No. The true light that gives light to everyone. He was in the world, and the world was made through him, yet the world did not know him. He came to his own, that is the Jews, but his own people did not receive him. But for all who did receive him, who believed in his name, he gave the right to become children of God. who were born not of blood, nor of the will of the flesh, nor of the will of man, but of God. And the Word became flesh and dwelt among us, and we have seen his glory as of the only Son from the Father, full of grace and truth. That is the glory that the Magi saw in the star and as they came and worshiped this King. And just as Isaiah said, he is a covenant. That means his blood is shed for us, the blood of the covenant. And that is the blood that covers our sin and brings us into Christ. This is a great story, don't you think? There's a lot there in this short narrative that we may have missed previous times. There's a lot here for us to meditate on, to think about. What glory we see here in the star, speaking to the Magi. God speaks to them and brings them to worship the great King. What a great story. Has great characters. An evil character, Herod. Important characters. Characters that speak to us and anticipate new covenant worship. The Magi from the east. And the most important character, of course, is the one who brings light to the nations. The true King, the King of kings and Lord of lords, the King of the universe, Jesus Christ. Beloved, this is your King. Bring him worship. He is our light. He is our King. He is the King of kings and Lord of lords. And just as the Magi did, we too bring him worship and obedience.